Hello everybody, how y'all doing today? My name is Nicholas. Today is a little backyard experiment and demonstration of some swordsmithing I've been doing, some gunsmithing and gunsmithing. I would call it a gun. I call it more of a launcher. So in between a rail gun, launcher, spear gun, dart gun, I don't know. It's weird. It's my own little backyard experiment. So this is a sword I made, and it's made out of a high chrome steel alloy that isn't very practical for weapons grade material, but it's just a interesting wall piece for right now. And this sword is about 4 feet long, but it is very lightweight. So it's not the proper alloy for this type of sword, but I imagine it to kind of flap around like a fish, like a spring with some razor blades on that thing. And it's an interesting piece of art and interesting weapons concept. So just made out of wire. You can do this from home. This is the reason why I'm not interested in patenting any of this stuff, is because I believe you could do a lot of this from simple homemade materials and supplies, hardware store stuff. So this is a PVC pipe with a line cut down the middle, making a rail. This is a spring inserted throughout the entire pipe. So it's a fairly long spring. Thin 1060 high carbon steel spring wire. Pretty good stuff for what I'm doing right here. Easier said than done getting the right sized of spring that is this long, that will fit into this pipe, and use it for what I'm going to intend to use it for. So it's an interesting little kid's toy of some type. I would love to have something like this if I was like 7 years old or something, but it's really not. So it's going to take some fine tuning to get this to launch at significant velocities up to like probably around under 200 feet per second, comparable to a compound bow or crossbow. And this is the projectile it uses. It's a piece of wire with fletching at the back. And so this is something very simple that you could assemble very easily at a hardware store. Other than the spring, I had to make the spring myself, and you need a very specific type of wire, steel wire, to get the right elasticity and compression ratio you want in this tube here. So that's a bit of a trick, but you can't use hardware store wire. That it's going to need to be some like high carbon of some type to get the compression. So I'm let off a few rounds here and demonstrate how this thing works. So 3, 2, 1. Oh, well, that was a bit of a... Anyways, this is a weird projectile. Another interesting thing I was thinking about doing with this is making a paper airplane launcher. I don't know. I love toys. If I was a kid, I would really love to have something like this. So this is a pretty weird projectile. It's like 2 arrows with some fletching at the back. And believe it or not, this is pretty accurate. And this is just a kind of an experimental paper airplane launcher. 3, 2, 1. So let's launch that back here. Uh-oh. That was almost hit the camera there. So I hit the table below it. And so this is a much larger scale version of that's the small scale version there. So this is a spring. Long spring, about 3 feet long. Magnets, piston. There's a lot more going on inside this thing that meets the eye. There are magnets in this thing. So eventually in the future, I'm going to get some coils and launch these projectiles using a type of railgun concept. So there's a PVC pipe. Cut the rail along the center. Spring. Piston down in here. This is a bolt lock trigger. Bolt, lock, and trigger. Listen up, folks. That's a bolt, lock, and trigger, and that's as simple as it gets. There's a slip knot. So what I do is I pull that wire from this knot created by the fletching in the dart, and it releases itself. So what I do is I load this thing like a... Oh, my beard got caught in there. Like so. And a little bit of a quick science question is here. I have a very small 5-pound spring in that tube, and it launches those projectiles at around 100 feet per second. This is a 50-pound spring made out of a different type of metal alloy, and it's fully compressed right here. But when I release this spring with this tension alone, with the 50-pound spring, it only accelerates this projectile to 50 feet per second, which is very slow. My question is, why does the smaller spring inside this little small scale prototype accelerate projectiles nearly twice as fast as this projectile using a 50-pound spring? Anyways, this works with propane. I have my, but I'm not using propane today because I'm in my neighborhood. I don't want to disturb my neighbors. It's not proper to shoot a potato cannon in your neighborhood. So I'll need to go out on the range to pump and compress propane into the combustion chamber here without causing a lot of my neighbors complaining and such. But so I'm using air pressure. A small air compressor here, 120 pounds, and compress this chamber here with 120 pounds with behind air piston and spring. When this trigger is released, I pull on this wire right here. This trigger is released, the projectile launches out, and so I have equivalent of 170 pounds estimate of compression locked inside of this tube here. So I think I'll just go ahead and demonstrate it. So let's screw in my air compressor valve. Maybe I should have done this before I started the video, but really the only time it takes is to start this, hook it up here and start the air compression. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Oh. Okay. Let's let off another round. Okay, well that is my third time making the video, and I have apparently lost all of my other projectiles. And so I don't want to make this video again, and until later in the future I might have some more interesting things to demonstrate here. But I'm working on something that should be very interesting within the next, hopefully this month, I'll have another video. So stay tuned. I've misplaced my other projectiles here, and to demonstrate how this other larger concept works. And I'm not getting the best efficiency out of it. Because it has to push the piston behind the spring and a projectile out the rail at the same time, it has to move a lot of mass. So I'm going to need a lighter, longer, more high tensile strength carbon steel spring to get the proper compression, and so on and so forth. This is going to require a lot of tuning to get it just right, because I cannot figure out why this 50-pound spring with 120 pounds of PSI behind a piston isn't launching this projectile at a much higher velocity. So before I move on to propane and other more flammable concepts here, I need to figure out what exactly is going on with this first. So I thought about patenting this. I think these are some really fun toys, but I don't think it's worth it because it is very cheap stuff. You go to the hardware store and buy this for, assemble this for 20 bucks, maybe even less. The spring is kind of hard to find. You need a long spring, and made out of a high carbon steel that is very elastic and is going to get these projectiles flying pretty fast. And that is the tricky part. It's about metallurgy. The metallurgy, the proper metallurgy of this projectile here. And so, what the hell? Got a jam there. Oh, it's poking out the back end. You know what? All right. Forget it. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.